Good morning, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the YouTube live series of the English Department of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. My name is Ron Darvin, and I'm a professor of applied linguistics here at the English Department. And for today, I wanted to talk about is TikTok tinkering with my brain, right? And this is a talk that's just going to be for 30 minutes. You'll have opportunities to ask questions at the end of the talk. You have the chat button there um, on your screen. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask questions. I'll try my best to answer them. So, just a bit of introduction. I moved here to Hong Kong last year from Vancouver, from the University of British Columbia, to be part of the English department. Very happy. My research has focused on how people use language and other resources to perform different digital practices, and how these practices shape our identities and relationships and the way we think about the world. At the English department, I teach courses like digital literacies as a social practice and digital technologies for language learning. And so we have these talks just for you to give you a sense of what we do here at the English department, right? So, off to the topic. I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people have become so addicted to TikTok. TikTok has become the world's most downloaded app in January of 2020. It's been downloaded 1.5 billion times on the App Store and the Apple App Store and Google Play. It is around 800 million users worldwide. And 41% of TikTok users are aged between 16 and 24. And they say users spend an average of 52 minutes a day, and there are 1 million videos that are viewed every day. Right? Now, for those of you who might not know what TikTok is all about, it's known widely for its act out memes. It's accompanied by music and other sound clips, which get incessantly reproduced and remixed among its users. And it's got a varied collection of tunes, be it pop, rap, R&B, electro, and DJ tracks, which accompany its 15-second video clips, backed by a wide mixture of effects and filters. Right? Uh, I don't know if you know this person, but one of the most popular people on TikTok right now is Charlie D'Amelio, who has 59 million followers. She's 15 years old from Connecticut in the US. And what she does is she choreographs dances to different viral songs, right? And her net worth is 4 million US dollars. Now, one of the things that the people have been looking at TikTok and how it works, and I don't know if you notice how if you go on any kind of social network app like Instagram, right? When you go on search, it keeps on recommending uh, different other users to you, right? And there's one research scientist at the University of California, Berkeley, who wanted to look at how TikTok recommends different users to you. So what he did was he started a fresh account, not linked to profiles of any other platforms, and as he followed various accounts, this is what he observed, right? And Fadul says he observed that the profile pictures of the recommended account seem very similar to the profile image of the initial account. That is, if you follow black men, it would lead to recommendations to follow more black men. Following white men with beards produce recommendations for white men with beards. And following elderly people spawn recommendations for other elderly people, and so on. Now, while these findings of Badul, of course, have to be researched further, what we have here is a difference in terms of kind of like how uh, these recommendations are done or are made, right? In many cases, what you find, let's say in Instagram or even when you go on Amazon, is what's known as collaborative filtering. That is, it's an algorithmic selection of accounts for which there's overlap between users. That is, if I purchase this dishwasher on Amazon, and other people who had purchased dishwashers in the past uh, bought other things, then it would recommend those other purchases made by people who made a similar purchase as mine. In the same way, on Instagram, if you like certain users, those who like certain users would follow other users, and those are the users that are recommended to you. Now, what Fadul's findings seem to suggest that TikTok is operating using a very different algorithm that is what's something called automatic featureization. That is, it takes signals from profile images to find profile pictures with similar attributes, right? And if anything, what it really points out is what what makes TikTok so cutting edge is that um, when you look at the way it recommends all these videos, all these users, it makes use of artificial intelligence that within a day, the app can get to know you so well that it feels like it's reading your mind, right? And how does it do that? Right? If you're watching for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, it registers in terms of the AI knowing how long you've spent on a particular video, and if it's something that you're interested in. And so right away, as you scroll down, it will keep feeding you exactly real time uh, stuff that's based on what you had just viewed, right? So TikTok takes advantage of AI not only for the production of videos, but for the delivery. That is, it's immediately prompting or it's immediately prompted into interpreting the user's behavior and delivering content based on these interpretations. So, in a very short span of time, it's able to absorb enough to make remarkably spot on predictions regarding which videos will catch your interest. And this, in turn, drives user interest. Now, TikTok's full screen design also allows every video to interpret both positive and negative signals from its viewers, right? That is, if you uh, switch to the next video or if you watch the video till the very end. Now, how does it benefit TikTok for you for it to recommend all these different users for you to watch? And this is where we need to understand how TikTok and other social media platforms are part of an industry, right? That is, uh, these social media platforms, although it talks about wanting to connect people in different ways, in the end, run as businesses. And how do these businesses make money? The first, of course, is uh, in these apps, you would have stuff like in app purchases. And if you look at the way it's done in TikTok, you're able to purchase coins, which are then used to purchase different stickers that you could send to the creators that you like, right? And if you notice, right, uh, you don't pay for a dollar amount for a specific sticker, but instead what it does is it makes you buy a set of 100 coins, 500 coins, and that way of doing things is very intentional in that when you send a panda or a love bang to one of the users, it doesn't make it very easy for you to compute how much you're actually spending, right? Because it does require a bit of math for you to be able to translate uh, how much these different stickers cost. And that also enables you to keep on spending within the app. And it's not very different from all the other apps where you have stuff like on Tinder, you can pay for Tinder Gold for 15 US dollars a month. And with that, you can get stuff like unlimited likes. You can send super likes. You can see who already like you. It has a boost feature which allows your profile to go straight to the top of another user's queue, right? But of course, when we look at these social media platforms, uh, how these platforms really make money, a lot of it is about being able to sell information about you to certain advertisers. That is, almost every product they create is designed to extract as much information from you as possible so that it can be used to create a more detailed profile of your behaviors and preferences so that the search results and social feeds uh, made by advertising companies are strongly incentivize you to push you towards certain products. Right? And so even when you look at something like Facebook, which claims that it has 52,000 data points of each user, right? Because if you think about all the stuff it can collect about you, it knows where you've traveled, who you hang out with. Through facial recognition, it knows exactly who these people are. It can detect their identities. They know where you studied. And that's why everything that's been collected in Facebook has been used to shape something like the US elections, right? And they say because of the amount of data that Facebook is able to collect, on the average, Facebook is able to make around 87 US dollars per user. Now, given all these things about kind of like the ecosystem in which social media works, you know, what, how is this relevant to someone like me, for instance, who's part of the applied linguistics stream here at the English department? And really, in the end, if we think about all these apps, all these social media platforms, they are about communication, right? They are about us being able to interact in very different social worlds, right? And if you look at these worlds that we inhabit, uh, a lot of how we behave is based on the design. That is, if the way we communicate uh, in, let's say, a classroom is shaped by the structure of a classroom, where the chairs are, where the desk is, um, and where I have to enter, where people can exit, right? In the same way, the moment we enter a particular platform, uh, the design of that platform already shapes our behavior, right? That is, it leads us, it points our eyes towards certain content, right? That allows us to interact with different users. And in the end, when we talk about this design, it is about language. It is about the images, the icons that we find that populate these platforms and are therefore part of that design. And so if we look at, you know, even the very affordance of being able to scroll infinitely, and this is why, you know, if you use TikTok, you just keep on swiping up and it just leads you to the next video and to the next. It has no end, right? Because as opposed to, let's say, the system of classifying information through pages, like, let's say, Google, when you get search results, would actually show you how many pages you're sorting through, right? The infinite scroll has been designed for you to just keep on swiping up so that you could be watching all these videos for hours, right? Even when you think about the refresh button, if you're on Facebook and you want to refresh content, the very uh, act of swiping down to refresh the content on that page, uh, some theorists have said, you know, it's pretty much linked to even when you're working on a slot machine, and why it's addicting, right? And you just keep on uh, pulling that lever down, right? There is that excitement that comes to pulling the lever down that is tied to the very process of scrolling down on your app. At the same time, if you understand kind of like the way these platforms are designed to collect information, the moment we join on these apps, we are asked to fill out different kinds of information about ourselves, right? And whatever it is that's highlighted there and these categories that we fill serve both a very social and technical function. That is, it's social in that we want people to know who we are, but at the same time, we need to be able to offer the tech companies this information, because by filling in these fields, then it's able to extract information systematically in a way that becomes big data. Now, what happens then, right? As we enter these details about us on our profile, uh, certain things about us as people get highlighted, and certain aspects of ourselves are left unsaid, right? And that in turn constructs very different notions of identity. When we think about hashtags, which have been creatively designed, right, for us to be able to follow topics that we're very interested in, again, it's a very social and technical function that it serves, in that it's able to classify information that will then register again as data for these platforms. But at the same time, what it does is it's able to generate certain trends and what we believe would be trendy, and that these trends in turn shape the way we behave online, the kinds of videos that we produce, the ways in which we use language to be able to label or make sense of the photos, the captions that we produce online. Even when you think about props, that is, when social media platforms are introduced and they try to get us to do what they want us to do, then there would usually be a description of kind of like what is expected, right, of us when we go online. And that's why I don't know if any of you remember or have seen Twitter when it started over a decade ago, right? The question prompt that it stated was, "What are you doing?" Right, and because of that, if you go to tweets from 10 years ago, right, a lot of it is was like, "Oh, I'm on my way to work. Oh, I'm buying, frappuccino at Starbucks." What it facilitated was behavior where people just kept on reporting what they were doing every 2 minutes, right? And eventually people got tired of that, because like, why would you want to know what's happening to people every 2 minutes, right? And so Twitter eventually changed the prompt to "what's happening," and by changing the language, that then shaped the kind of posts that people did, that is, it's able to then allow people to report everything that's happening that is of somewhat of significance, right, in different parts of the world. And that has evolved into what Twitter has, we recognize it as it is today, right? Now, if you think even about the different kinds of buttons that we find, right? Facebook just recently released that kind of like emoji of you care, that caring emoji of you hugging a heart, right? And if you think about how it's evolved, right, from the simple like button into having something with a heart, smiley face, wow emoji, teary eyes, or angry, right? Um, it's there again to be able to, one, to capture in a very systematic way how that post makes you feel, but at the same time, uh, by coming up with very specific categories, by coming up with very specific buttons, it in turn limits the kind of emotions we're allowed to express online, right? If you think about, oh, why is there no button for baffled, right? As you might be feeling about this talk right now, right? Why is there no there is no button for angsty, right? And so we recognize that as these different platforms are designed in very specific ways to be able to collect data. What it does also is it allows us to fill in kind of like or occupy these different categories, but then in a sense that also shapes the way we feel about ourselves, the way we think we should feel, whether it's thinking about the way if we want to represent ourselves as a dog using filters, or as you can see in the icon on the right, the moment that we use filters to be able to narrow down the things that we see online, right, that uh, the kind of information that we project about ourselves to the kind of information that we get from this ecosystem is naturally limited, right? And one example that I just wanted to give quickly is that there was this site in online that came out a couple of years ago where it claimed to be the first international beauty contest judged by artificial intelligence, right? And what it was supposed to do was to look at objective factors like facial symmetry and wrinkles to identify the most attractive contestants, and it was going to use AI to be able to read this. Now, roughly 6,000 people from 100 countries submitted photos in the hopes that AI could determine what closely resembled human beauty, right? And when the results came in, uh, something really interesting came out, and that everything that almost all the results that came out were mostly white people, right? Out of the 44 winners, nearly all were white, a handful were Asian, and only one had dark skin. And that's despite the fact that although the majority of contestants were white, many people of color submitted photos, right? But then what was different was that the one who developed the project, the kinds of data sets of photos that they fed into the system uh, were mostly white people, and therefore the AI recognized, you know, uh, how it was kind of like that version of beauty that it should read as it evaluated all the different photos. Right. I see a question here by Notwich asking, now that we know how it's designed to work, how platforms collect data, uh, what's the message to pay more attention to the adverts you're using? I think the thing that to answer your question, Norwich, is that we know that we can't escape, being part of social media platforms. It's become part of the social world, right? But I think if you talk about kind of technology, one thing we have to recognize is technology is not neutral. That is uh, we hear about kind of like, oh, machine learning and AI, and there's an ideology of neutrality to say, oh, it's just the machine that determines that, and it's not subject to human bias. But the reality is that these machines, these programs, this software are still designed by people, people with different biases and assumptions about the world. And that's why, if we look at kind of like the way we would read, let's say, a history textbook, and we encounter this particular chapter on the age of exploration, discovery, and expansion. And if we were to think about more critically how this chapter was produced in terms of disseminating this kind of information, right? One just had to look at who the author was, look at the publisher, right? But the moment that we go online and let's say we post that particular piece of content on something like Instagram, so much more so is at work. All these different layers of user, of audience interacting with the user, of advertiser, of the tech company designing this material in different ways, right? Which brings us back to the question that we started with, right? Is TikTok tinkering with my brain? And the the answer really here is not it's not as simple as a yes or no, right? But one thing we do know is that if we understand, right, that as we interact within these spaces like TikTok, that these platforms are designed with a particular purpose. That while they say they try to connect people, they are also designed to be able to make money, right? And how they make money is to make sure that you stay online, that you are hooked, that you continue to produce videos, that you continue to like and comment on videos, and that's why it works to their advantage if they try to understand what it is you like, to keep on feeding it is that you like. It allows you to um, play around with these different affordances of filters and all that, to for you to imagine different versions of yourself. But at the same time, these different versions are also within a set of affordances that these technologies provide. How I begin to label myself on my profile on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram is determined by the categories of identity that have been identified by these platforms as significant for them to be able to collect data about us. And while they've always said social media is about connecting with the whole world, uh, because it keeps on interpreting what you want, it keeps feeding you content that they think you want. I think we need to ask also to what extent, right? Is it really that because we keep on feeding these apps what we want, and in turn we get the ads and the content that we like, to what extent is it shaping what's called a filter bubble that is, instead of linking, connecting with diverse sets of people, with diverse sets of ideas, that we're entering this bubble where we only get what it is that that we're interested in, and that is a very limited world. And so to end, I think what I hope we've tried to do in this short span of time is for us to think about, like, as we continue to interact with people, and as we continue to represent ourselves, as we continue uh, to read and consume information online, we need to be able to ask also in what way the design of these apps, and by design I just don't mean the layout and the kinds of linguistic and semiotic features, but how the algorithms work in terms of delivering information to us, because this in turn uh, in a sense, does tinker with our brain in a way that it shapes the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we relate with others. And I think that is something that we need to be always aware of. Okay, uh, that's all I have to say in my short 20, 27 minutes or so. I don't know if you have any questions. I'm looking at the screen to see if there are any questions. If there are no questions, then uh, thank you for being part of this short conversation. And I hope if one of you is considering to be part of the English department here at CUHK, we'd want to welcome you. Uh, CUHK is right now one of the top 50 universities in the world, and we're very proud, to be part of this institution. And if you're thinking about joining CUHK, that it's something that you consider. Okay, if there are no questions, then that's me. This is Ron Darvin. Thank you for joining us this morning.